Absolutely amazing. Hello, welcome to Waypoint Survival. Today, I'm going to show you how to make a hobo Christmas treat. It's called fatiman, it's from Norway, and it's delicious. Stay tuned. My Uncle Ted Tollefson was born in 1904 in Minnesota. He was born into a large family, and he himself grew very tall. He was full-blooded Norwegian and stood 6'6" in his stocking feet. Here's a picture of he and I together in the late 1980s. I was probably 13 or 14 years old myself. I was learning to play the harmonica, and he knew that I liked that, and so he got to where he couldn't hear very well, and so he would make cassette tapes and send them with a box of goodies, and he sent me a very nice Hohner double reed harmonica that I learned and practiced on. The early part of his life was difficult, and when he was about 13 or 14 years old, as I said, he himself left home. There were many reasons, not only the poverty, but also from time to time his dad was known to drink, and it created some difficulty around the home. And so forever afterwards, my Uncle Ted always hated alcohol and never took a drop of liquor himself, to the best of my knowledge, and he lived until he was right around 97 years old. But he was a great guy and had a lot of stories. He even served with the CCC in the 1930s and on into the Second World War, where he was stationed in the Aleutian Islands. He loved to cook, and I have a feeling that he learned a lot of that in his hobo days as he was traveling around the country, following the harvest, and doing different jobs to make a living and provide for himself. One of the things that he learned to make, probably at home, was a dish called pastry. In Norwegian, it's called fatiman. And of course, we love to eat that. He would make it and bring it over. We used to live in Tampa, Florida, and he would bring it over as a snack. But it's actually a Christmas delicacy, or you can make it any time of the year. But I thought it would be especially appropriate doing this hobo series to give a shout out to my great Uncle Ted. He's been gone since 2001, but he was a hobo, and he traveled many, many miles. I would love to know all of his stories. I'm sure you'd have many of them, but let's get started. The first thing we're going to need for our fattigmanne, or poor man, is we're going to need 4 eggs. And I'm going to put them in here and move to the next step. Next, we need to add a cup of just regular sugar, and we're going to beat this together. You don't want to beat this really hard. You kind of want to more fold it in, but you'll get the idea as you work it. Next, we need to add a cup of milk. And stir that in. Next, we need to add 2 level teaspoons of baking powder. One and 2. Next, we need to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And then, of course, stir this all in. And then next, we need to add enough flour to make a stiff dough. So this is something you'll just have to pay attention to, depending on the size of the eggs and different ingredients that you use. You may need more or less of this. But what you're looking for is you want to add enough to make sure that you have a stiff dough. That's the key phrase. And you want to fold this in. So when you're done, your dough should look something like this. A nice, stiff lump of dough. And again, how much you use of the flour will depend on how big your eggs are, and various recipes, of course, call for more or less. But this is the one that my uncle gave me, so that's pretty good. All right, we're going to set this aside for just a minute. And the next thing we need to do is get our hobo pot and some good old lard. Now, this is not Crisco, this is actual lard. And we're going to spoon some in here, and we're going to put this on the fire and let it start melting and heating up. So we're supposed to fry this in what's called deep fat, according to my great uncle. So I'm going to put a little more than half of this in here, because I want to make sure that it's plenty for it to fry in. Alright, that's pretty good. Let's get ready to put it on the fire. We've had this fire going for some time, and we have a really nice bed of coals here, and we're just going to push these together just like this, kind of spread things out a little so that the pan can set level on top. That's kind of the most important part of this whole thing. Keep these coals down below there. We can always rake more in if we need to. Now we're just going to simply take our pot of lard here, set it right on top. There we go. Make sure that's supported well. You don't want this to flip over. That's why these rocks need to be close enough together to actually provide some good support. That seems pretty good right there. While our lard is heating up, getting up to proper heat, I'm going to take our old cutting board here, and we're going to sprinkle some flour on there. Spread that around a little bit. And then a little bit on the old rolling pin here. Next, we want to take a little bit of our dough. I'm going to roll this out pretty thin, so we don't want a great big huge glob of it. So maybe about a fist-sized piece to start with. And we're just going to roll it out nice and flat. I'll do that and get back with you. As you can see, that was about the right amount of dough. We don't want a great big huge amount globbing up everything, and it's supposed to be really thin. So that looks about right. Next, we take our knife and we begin to make some small slits. And about 2-inch strips is what we're looking for. Again, you could just guess. This doesn't have to be perfect. Like this. And then we want to make some diagonals. So you can see how we've got that slit right there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to cut this at an angle. So just like that. Now, these full pieces here in the middle, we're going to take one of these. Again, they're sort of diamond shaped. You can see what that looks like. We're going to put a small slit right in the middle. Just something very simple. So a little hole, just like that. Okay, open this up, and you're going to take one of these points and you're going to fold it down through that hole, just like this. Kind of turn it inside out, and it makes a little bow tie looking affair. So again, we take our piece of dough, cut a slit in it, right in the center roughly, open it up just a bit, take one of those ends, fold it back over, down through the hole, out the other side, and there it looks like that. And we'll do that to all of these. Now this makes a lot of Christmas delicacies. So one reason it's called pastry or fattigmanne, because it goes a really long way, makes some really good tasty food. To make sure that your grease is hot enough, you can drop a little bit of dough. I just did a little drop of dough You can see it floating around in there. You want to make sure that that's actually starting to fry before you put your fatiman in there. So here we have our fatiman. Got 9 pieces here. Again, we've got a very small pot. We're just going to take them individually and just very carefully drop them in and get them started frying. When they start to get done, as they fry, they'll come up to the surface, as you can see there. As they're frying, you'll notice they'll start to turn a nice golden brown. And of course, you want to flip them over from side to side so that they get evenly cooked all the way around. Now, if you have a larger pot, you can do more than this, but for a hobo, small pot, you don't have a whole lot of lard, this will work really well for you. When they have turned a nice golden brown, then it's time to take them off. I'm going to use our old bluebird pan here with a piece of bag on top. And we're just going to fish these out individually and put them on the paper to drain. We'll let these cool and we'll add some more to the pot. Now when you're doing this, remember it's extremely critical that you do this over coals. Do not do this over a fire. Remember that grease is flammable and you have to control the heat as best you can by pulling coals away, pulling them in, blowing on it occasionally, and of course just staying close to it and watching it. Now that it has cooled sufficiently, just these first 9 that we did, there's one more step. We have a bag and inside we just have a cup of powdered sugar. Now all we're going to do is we're just going to put these in the bag like this, close the bag up and roll it a bit and shake. Doesn't take a whole lot. Knock it against the side of the bag, and here we have our finished fatiman. Alright, well the only thing remains is to have a bite. Wow, is that delicious. It's crunchy and sweet, just like I remember it. It's absolutely delicious. Now this recipe, as I said, I got from my great uncle, and I wrote it down with my own hand probably 36 years ago. Absolutely amazing. You're going to like this. Doesn't require a lot of ingredients. That's why it's called fatiman, which in Norwegian means poor man. I hope you make this. I hope you enjoy it, and hope you all have a very Merry Christmas.